constant through all the years, Ray, has been baseball.
Little roller up along first. Behind the bag. It gets through Buckner. Here comes Knight, and the Mets win. Now the 2-1. Line drive to base hit. Just as they score the tying run. Green to the plate. And he is safe. Safe at the plate. The Braves go to the World Series.
Have reserved seats somewhere along one of the baselines that sat when they were children and cheered their heroes.
Gibson swings and a fly ball to deep right field. This is going to be a home run. Unbelievable!
A 3-run home run for Bucky Dent. The Yankees now lead it by a score of 3-2.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mazeroski has hit a 1-0 pitch over the left field fence at Ford Field to win the 1960 World Series.
They'll arrive at your door as innocent as children, longing for the past.
The Pope arrived at Yankee Stadium. As one enthusiastic announcer put it, he is standing on second base.
Reggie Jackson. Long drive right field. It is goodbye. Big World Series for Reggie Jackson.
The Blue Jays are World Series champions as Joe Carter hits a 3-run home run.
Brackett throws. There's a left back. It's going to be, I believe, the Giants from the pennant. The Giants from the pennant. The Giants from the pennant.
The 0-1 pitch. A liner off Nagy's glove into center field. The Florida Marlins have won the World Series.
The memories will be so thick that I can brush them away from my faces.
The 1-0 delivery to Fisk. He swings, long drive, left field. If it stays fair, it's gone. Home run. The Red Sox win. And the series is...
Lolich fires. Ball is hit high in the air. This should be the series. Freehand waving everybody away in foul territory. Detroit wins.
Here's the pitch to Willie. There's a liner straight to Richardson. The ball game is over and the World Series is over. Willie McCovey hit it like a bullet. A line drive right
Baseball to mark the time.
The Oakland A's take.
I'll tell you what, we're having an earthquake.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Candlestick Park for Game 3 of the 1989 World Series.
It's been erased like a blackboard, rebuilt and erased again.
Frank Robinson, the right-hand batter.
Long drive to left field. Way back. It's hit back. Home run.
Base hit loaded, 1 out. Pena in a jam. The Twins are going to win the World Series. The Twins have won it.
Ozzie with 1 out. Smith corks one into right down the line. It may go. Go crazy, folks. Go crazy. It's a home run. And the
Willie Mays just brought this crowd to its feet with a catch, which must have been an optical illusion to a lot of people.
This field, this game, is a part of our past, Ray. It reminds us of all that once was good, and it could be again.
Broadcasted live.
Hey! Who wants to have some fun?
There are balls coming from all over the place. Left field, center field, right field. See, this is the kind of thing, quite honestly, right now, that makes you want to see the Chicago Cubs team lose.
Now, are you just saying you want to have fun, or do you really want to have fun?
It'll be fun.
Will the next person that sees anybody throw anything onto this field, point them out, or get them out of here? You don't live in Cleveland. You live in Cincinnati.
You talking to me? You talking to me?
That is the farthest thing in the universe from the truth.
Hello, everyone, live. It's the Dan Scott Show. And right there is your host, Dan Scott.
Well, hi there. How are you? Good to be back with you after an extended period of time. I almost had to draw myself a map to get to the studio, and I did have to take a little bit of a tutorial to remember how to work all of our technology again. But welcome back to the Dan Scott Show. I am the guy whose name is on the bill for better or worse, usually worse. But it's good to be back and good to be here at Furman and getting ready to get the 2019 college football season kicked off. We got a lot of stuff that we're going to be getting into today and moving forward, and just happy to be back with you after an extended period of time. Some of you may be wondering where the show went. Some of you may be wondering, who is this guy? It's been that long. But just a little bit of a recap so you'll know kind of where we've been and why there's been this extended sabbatical, if you will, or hiatus maybe would be a better word. You recall back in February, and I was very open about this because we coveted your prayers. My wife, we had a cancer scare with her, and she had to have major surgery, and what we were told, they were 95% sure that she had cancer. Thank God it turned out they were able to get the mass out, and it was the step before cancer. In fact, they told us had she waited another 6 months, basically if we were doing the surgery right now, it would have become full-blown cancer. So the good Lord was definitely with us. That took a toll on both of us, as you might imagine, and with some other things that were going on, I just needed a break. There's no other way to put it. Mentally, my mind was elsewhere with her and making sure that she was okay. And I was just not in the mental frame of mind to come in and do a show on a daily basis. I think we did one every week or every other week for a month or two, something along those lines. But I was just basically mailing it in, and it was not doing anybody any good, especially our sponsors. So we just decided to shut it down and get refocused and recharged, and that's basically where we've been for the last few months. I've had a great summer with Angela. We got a chance to do some traveling that we hadn't done in the past, working vacations, if you will, and thankfully she is doing fine, and we are recharged and refocused and ready to get this bad boy rolling again. And we think we've got a good one for you here on day one. I'm a guy who knows his strengths, a guy who knows how to maximize his efforts, so to speak. So I wasn't going to come back day one without a big hammer to swing, and that big hammer is going to be Dave Glenn of ACCSports.com, the David Glenn Show up in the state of North Carolina. We talk a lot of ACC, obviously, with Dave. Plus, we riff on a lot of other things with him as well. But this is an intriguing time because Dave is with us today. Tomorrow is the long-awaited debut of the ACC Network, coming on the heels, of course, of the Big Ten, the Pac-12, the Southeastern Conference, the Big 12, all having their own networks. The ACC is kind of the last of the Power Fives to get there, and it's been a long time coming. And while there's a lot of excitement about it in ACC circles, there's also a bit of drama going on because they're having a hard time getting some of the major players in the cable and satellite world to pick it up. And that's all negotiations and things along those lines. So Dave will be here to give us the latest on that, who's carrying it, who's not, what kind of programming you're going to see, his thoughts there, and then obviously we're going to be getting into the realm of college football as well. From our standpoint here on Furman's campus, as we prepare for the 2019 season moving forward. As the show moves on, in our next segment, you're going to hear from Clay Hendricks. We're going to be talking about the preseason rankings that have Furman inside the top 20. And I actually did a radio show up in Fargo, North Dakota this week, where they have Furman ranked as one of the top 10 teams in the country. We'll talk about that experience coming up in just a bit as well. But just give you a little bit of an insight as to where the Paladins are right now as camp is winding down. Next week on Monday, they'll begin actual game week preparation for Charleston Southern. And in fact, I believe if I remember Clay Hendricks correctly, and you'll hear it, I think, in this video, is after today's practice, or maybe it was after yesterday's practice, they are going to start basically full-time prep for the opener with Charleston Southern, which, by the way, is here at Paladin Stadium. It's the first time we've opened at home, I think, in 5 seasons. And so we're looking forward to that and hope this place is going to be packed and hope that there's going to be a big festive atmosphere and hope that the Paladins are going to get a win to open the season and not have to worry about back-to-back 0-3 starts to the campaign. But boy, the slow starts in the Clay Hendricks' first 2 years have been followed up by furious finishes, which have included a trip to the playoffs and a share of the Southern Conference Championship in 2 years. So he has done his part, he and his staff, in restoring culture and getting this program headed back into to the direction and taking its place where Furman people believe it should be. And we just hope that the fans are going to respond to that and come out and support this team. In the last portion of the program, after our interview with Dave Glenn, I'm going to give you a sneak preview of a couple of things. One being, you know how teams always do hype videos now. Well, I call this a little hype audio. Every broadcast that we do in our Countdown to Kickoff show, we do what's called the Furman flashback, and that's looking back at the previous week's game told through the story of highlights. Well, for game 1, obviously we have to look back at the previous season. So you are going to hear today what will play on August 31st in our Furman flashback segment on the broadcast. You're going to get a sneak peek of that today. And also, since the last time we talked, the Furman Sports Network has changed rights holders. We are now with a group called Van Wagner. And with that comes a lot of different branding and the things that go along with that kind of move. And I'm also going to let you hear, for the first time, our new network theme. And I want to tell you, I searched long and hard for this and had negotiations with people over a couple of different options before we ended up licensing the one that we have. And I think you're going to like it. I think it screams network sports, radio network sports. You're going to hear that sneak peek is not the right word, sneak listen, first opportunity ahead of the games that are coming up beginning on the 31st. I'll let you hear that as well. So we got a lot to get to and not a lot of time to do it. So let's go ahead and take a first break. We'll come back and we'll hear from Clay Hendricks and get you Furman fans kind of caught up with what he's thinking as well as where the Paladins are landing in the preseason polls. And we will do all of that in just a moment. Hey, everybody, Dan Scott here, and I want to tell you about my technology partner, Carolina Creative Group. When my show needed a creative technology boost, I turned to Carolina Creative Group. My custom design website is going to take marketing as well as brand strategy and development to new levels. The search engine optimization means that my clients' ads will be seen by more people more often. And if I have any questions, Carolina Creative Group is just a phone call away. Friends, that is just the tip of the proverbial iceberg. You can find out all the ways that Carolina Creative Group can help your business by simply calling 864-250-2012. Again, that's 864-250-2012, or simply visit them online at carolinacreative.co. Carolina Creative Group, technology partner of the Dan Scott Show.
Imagine a university A university where your passion for protecting local water sources is encouraged. And now, your work not only benefits your career, but the health of those in your community and around the world. This is Furman. This is the Furman Advantage.
If you're looking for auto repair, you want superior work, not inferior parts and worse, inferior pricing. Hi, this is Dan Scott. I take all of my business to Superior Auto Care. That's Chris Burkett at 410 Ross Avenue in Easley. He brought my wife's car back from the dead. There's no other way to say it. For 4 months, it had been sitting with a major transmission issue. Chris was able to diagnose it along with some other problems and get it back and running again. Mrs. Scott is happy, and guys, you know how it is. Happy wife, happy life, right? Well, he can do it all for you, from the simple things like oil changes, brake service, air conditioning service, tires, to major engine and transmission work, even electrical work. Works on domestic cars as well as foreign cars. Again, they're located at 410 Ross Avenue. That's Superior Auto Care. Give them a call today at 864-306-1988. Superior Auto Care in Easley.
Let me tell you something, Cowboy. This rookie can really bring the heat.
He's smoky and spicy with a Chipotle style all his own.
It's a new Montgomery Inn Chipotle barbecue sauce. Make it a part of your home team.
Available now at your neighborhood grocer or online at CincyFavorites.com.
Hi, welcome back. Second segment of the show. I'm Dan Scott. Good to have you with us on this Wednesday edition of the program, our relaunch, if you will. Invite you to visit the website that you see there on the screen, thedanscottshow.com. You can watch the show live there. You can interact with us. There's a resource page that can get you just about anywhere you want to go when it comes to finding sports news and other stuff, including a blog that I need to activate and get going as well. But that's thedanscottshow.com. And also, you can follow us on Twitter at Dan Scott Show. Would love to see you there. All right, let's talk a little Furman football, and let's begin with the latest rankings. These are I say latest, they're the first rankings, if you will. The FCS stats poll or Stats FCS poll, if you want to be technical, and the coaches polls have both been released. The coaches poll, the most recent one, and as you might imagine, North Dakota State, James Madison, Eastern Washington 1, 2, and 3. In fact, they're 1, 2 in North Dakota State and James Madison 1 and 2 in both polls. Eastern Washington 3 in the coaches poll, 4 in the Stats FCS poll, with South Dakota State sneaking into the number 3 spot. The Furman Paladins in the coaches poll are ranked 17th in the preseason, 19th in the Stat FCS poll, and one of only 2 Southern Conference teams that are ranked in the preseason. In the Stats FCS poll, Wofford is number 9, and the Terriers are number 8 in the FCS coaches poll. There's not another SoCon team ranked in the top 25. You got to go down to others receiving votes. East Tennessee State would be 29th in the coaches poll, and Chattanooga 30th. And the ETSU is 26th in the Stats FCS poll, and they're the only one within striking distance. So the Bucks, who had a breakout year last year, are on the outside, very close looking in at the top 25, but only Furman and Wofford in the preseason top 25 polls. I did an interview on Monday with the guys at the North Dakota State flagship station up in Fargo, and I'm kind of wondering, okay, why are they bringing in somebody from Furman to talk FCS football at North Dakota State? Well, it turns out they do their own rankings, and they are visiting with someone on the air every day inside their top 10. And lo and behold, they've got Furman ranked at number 10 in their own little preseason poll. So we had a good time talking football with Jeff Culhane and the folks up at in Fargo, who, again, are the flagship station for North Dakota State. So we are excited to see where this is going to go. The rest of the top 10 in the Stats FCS poll, I mentioned it's North Dakota State, James Madison, South Dakota State 3, Eastern Washington 4, then UC Davis, Jacksonville State, Maine, Weber State, Wofford, and Kennesaw State. And then the top 10 in the FCS coaches poll, North Dakota State, James Madison, Eastern Washington, South Dakota State at 4, UC Davis 5, then Jacksonville State, Maine, Wofford, Weber State, and Kennesaw State out of the Big South. So that is your top 10 where that poll is concerned. After we visit with Dave Glenn, we'll hear from head coach Clay Hendricks, and then we will also take a listen, as I mentioned, to a couple of exclusives. You're going to get to hear them before anybody else does. The Furman flashback highlights of the 2018 season that will air in Week 1's Countdown to Kickoff pregame show, and our new network theme as well. All that coming up after our visit with Dave Glenn, but we've got to take a break and come back, and we'll talk some ACC sports, among other things, with the best in the business, as far as I'm concerned, Dave Glenn of the David Glenn Show and ACCSports.com. That'll be coming up in just a moment as the Dan Scott Show returns after this break. Dan Scott here for Todaro Pizza. Some of you may remember my old radio show in Clemson. Todaro Pizza was a sponsor of mine from the earliest days of the show. And if you know anything about me when it comes to advertising restaurants, if I don't like the food, I ain't going to tell you to go there. I love Todaro Pizza, and now Clemson's Best Pizza has finally come to Greenville. Yes, the new Todaro location is located at 116 North Markley Street, right down the block from Fluor Field. Classic, specialty and stuffed pizzas, calzones, wings, and so much more. The no-limit lunch buffet is available 7 days a week for just $8. Monday night is cheap pizza night, and you can try your hand at trivia every Thursday. Todaro Pizza has outdoor dining on Markley. It's open late, making it a convenient stop before or after the drive games. Find them on Facebook or online at TodaroPizza.com. Todaro Pizza, 864-603-3500.
For a child battling a critical illness, a wish come true can be a turning point. One song, one dance, one game, one moment changes everything. Make-A-Wish needs your support to grant more life-changing wishes. Visit Make-A-Wish online now. Together, we can transform lives, one wish at a time.
Dan Scott here for the Atlanta Bread Company. What do I like about Atlanta Bread? Well, too much to mention in a short commercial, but here are a few things. Bread baked daily fresh on site, a tremendous selection of soup, sandwiches, and salads, seasonal special additions to the menu, delicious hot coffee, and a bevy of other drink options. And yeah, can't forget about the baked sweet goodies. Dine in or carry out, and when you have the Atlanta Bread Company app, you can order and pay online, then breeze past the lines to the pickup counter to get your food. Experience it for yourself. That's the Atlanta Bread Company, Cherrydale Point in Greenville. All right, welcome back to the show. I am your host, Dan Scott. Good to have you with us as we continue to roll on through our return to the, I keep wanting to say the airwaves. Yesterday was National Radio Day, and the platform we have now, at least for the moment, is strictly on the internet. But I'm a radio guy at heart, and I've told you this story before that 2 weeks into my first radio job when I was 18 years old, a guy who did middays at my hometown radio station, who was a lifer, he said, "Be careful. If this business gets in your blood, you'll never get it out." And boy, was he right. No truer words in my life practically have ever been spoken, but I consider this still to be a radio show that you're kind of just getting a chance to to look in on. Anyway, speaking of radio, speaking of guests, speaking of themes, we welcome back after his summer hiatus our good friend, and we believe yours too, Dave Glenn, ACCSports.com, the David Glenn Show, syndicated throughout the state of North Carolina, and also writes for The Athletic. He does all that stuff and still makes time for us too. Dave, how you doing, man?
I am doing great, Dan. It is good to be back with you for one more season, I guess we could say in air quotes. We've been at this a long time, and my visits with you are something I look forward to every summer.
Well, I appreciate you saying that and reading the script the way that I sent it to you. I think that's and speaking of summer, I was telling the folks as we came back here that my wife and I did some unusual traveling for us. We did some working vacations this summer, but the Glenn family did not take its usual trip to Philly this time, did they?
Well, we did take that. We just took an extra.
Oh, okay.
And in that case, we went to London. And I am very much a to each his own, to each her own person when it comes to parenting for the most part. But the Glenn family philosophy is you don't travel internationally with little kids. You wait until they're old enough to appreciate and remember such a great opportunity. Mm-hmm. So with my son being 20 and my daughter being almost 17, certainly the time was ripe. And I believe that London is not only one of the great cities historically in the world, but I still think here in 2019 it's one of the great cities. And we did everything you'd imagine, some art, some museums, lots and lots of history, lots and lots of royal family, some great food. The English aren't necessarily known for great food, but a big city like London has a restaurant from virtually every variety of food available in the world, and we enjoyed a lot of them. And we squeezed in a Premier League soccer match, which I'll tell you, Dan, as a guy who's traveled the country as I have, whether it's Duke, Carolina, which I've been covering in basketball since the late 1980s, or, an Auburn, Alabama style college football rivalry, or growing up in Philly, even some of those New York, Philadelphia rivalries where my dad would say, hey, this is going to be a little different. Be on guard today for something crazy to happen between the fans.
Yep.
I'm not sure I've ever seen anything more intense than what we witnessed when Tottenham hosted Aston Villa in a Premier League soccer match, because it was a new stadium. All the visiting fans were in one section, and of course they're surrounded on three sides by the home fans. And we were seated right on the edge between the visiting fans and the home fans. So we had a front row, literally, view of the back and forth. And when they build a stadium with a security trench in mind, I mean, there's only security people walking these trenches, no spectators. And there's hockey-like glass separating some of the fans from one side against the other. That's a different type of intensity than even some of the most intense things you'll see in American sports.
That's pretty strong. That's pretty strong. And I would imagine some of the chants were pretty good, too. I don't know if they were clean, but I would imagine some of them were pretty good as well based on what we've seen. That's good that you got a chance to do that. Your kids will remember that for the rest of their lives.
Amen.
Hey, let's get into it. You and I get back at it today, and tomorrow is a monumental day for the Atlantic Coast Conference as the long, and underline that word, long-awaited debut of the ACC network is supposed to take place. I would imagine there are some folks in the office in Greensboro and really across the ACC fan base who have to be saying, man, it's about time.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, the Big Ten Network launched more than a decade ago. And although they struggled for a little while, it has been essentially, the proverbial money tree planted in the backyard that has made the Big Ten one of the most lucrative conferences in America. The SEC Network launched 5 years ago this month. As with the ACC, the SEC did so in partnership with ESPN. Big Ten did it in partnership with Fox. But whereas, say, the Pac-12 network is still struggling mightily and nothing like what was originally intended or promised, the SEC and the Big Ten are by far the wealthiest conferences, even within the Power Five, they are leaving the other three behind. And it's not the only reason that they've separated themselves financially, but there's no doubt that TV money in general is the biggest driving force in what's separating the haves from the have-nots. And these conference-specific channels are at least part of that TV money. And the ACC is in catch-up mode. And a lot of people think the ACC was asleep at the switch and did wait too long in a quickly changing TV world to try to grab its share of this financial pie. So the good news is the channel officially launches tomorrow. More good news for most is that a majority of the biggest carriers have agreed to carry the ACC network. Now, that's no consolation, say, if you're a Dish Network customer. They still haven't agreed to carry it. It's no consolation if you're a Comcast Xfinity cable customer. They have not yet agreed to carry it. But a huge majority of smaller, mid-sized, and even one-by-one, most of the bigger carriers, cable, satellite, fiber, or otherwise, the ACC is happy with its distribution, and it's really only missing two huge partners. They're missing a few smaller ones, but really Comcast and the Dish Network, which both have, 10 or more million American TV households as customers. Those are pretty big missing puzzle pieces as the ACC network launches tomorrow. But I will remind folks that 5 years ago, the SEC network was a success story right out of the gate. The Big Ten took a while to become a success story. The SEC network's deals, the carriage deals, a lot of them went down to the wire, and some of them extended even past the launch of the SEC network. So the ACC, in my opinion, is ahead of schedule with these distribution agreements, but they would love to see one or two of those other big ones fall into place, either within the next few days with this launch, or certainly when the exclusive games start coming. Clemson, Georgia Tech, ECU in our state visits NC State. The only way to watch those games is to have a carrier that carries the ACC network. You can't stream them. There's no end around. There's no side door. There's no, ESPN3 option. You either have the ACC network from your carrier or you can't watch those games. And of course, that's been a big motivator that the ACC has been using with these deals and these negotiations. And in most cases, they feel good about how the negotiations have gone.
So basically, that's what this is with those two main characters. It's just a matter of negotiations continuing and getting to the right numbers for both sides.
That's exactly right. And you know the deal, Dan. At a negotiating table like this, Comcast and Xfinity are trying to keep their costs down so they don't have to pass along higher prices to their own customers. So they certainly have an incentive to carry the ACC network, but it all comes down to at what price. And the ACC folks with ESPN as their partner want that price to be as high as possible per month. And the carriers want that price to be as low as possible per month. I mean, that's just good old-fashioned economics. Both sides have an incentive to be agreeable, right? I mean, the ACC needs massive distribution. The Pac-12, Dan, is 7 years after launch and still can't get to 20 million American TV households.
Wow.
Whereas the Big Ten and the SEC are in almost 50 million or more, in some cases, American TV households. So you need to be distributed, but you need to be distributed at a reasonable price. The carriers want to keep their customers happy on the one hand by carrying channels that are desirable, but they want to keep their customers happy on the other hand by not signing up at too high prices so that their prices go up with their consumers. So it's big time economics, man. There are truly billions of dollars at stake here. But for those who don't know, we're living in a world now where the Big Ten cuts a check, the most recent check for its members, $54 million. If you run a $100 million athletic department, every year you're getting a $54 million check from the Big Ten. You just covered half your budget or more in one check that you get from the Big Ten. I mean, that's massive. That number in the ACC per school has been less than $30 million. So, the ACC has been doing fine competitively. It's winning more college basketball titles than anybody else. It's won 3 of the last 6 college football titles. But over time, if the Big Ten network is cutting checks for $54 million every year, the ACC is cutting checks for $29 million every year. I mean, you can't fall that far behind the Big Ten, and the SEC checks are roughly $44 million a year. That's not just a little gap, the way we saw for decades. And in our time together, the ACC, for most of our time knowing each other, Dan, has been the wealthiest conference in college athletics. And in the last half a dozen years or so there have some years where the ACC is number 5 in terms of the size of those checks sent per school. So, again, you can still be competitive without being the wealthiest. But you don't want to fall to number 5 and stay there too long. And the launch of the ACC network offers the promise of, $5 million in new revenue per school per year. And that's at the beginning. And over time, they hope it's a much bigger number than that. We'll see about that. But the ACC needed to take a bite out of that revenue gap. And the ACC network, at the very least, is going to take a bite. It's just a matter of how big a bite.
So before we move on to something else, let's say nothing changes in the next 24 hours when the programming launches tomorrow without those two major players. How many homes will the ACC network be in at the beginning? Do you have that number?
It's basically impossible to know the number. Here's the number that we can know. We can tell you, for example, that DirecTV has about 19 million TV households in our country, and DirecTV is carrying it. We don't know the number, how many DirecTV customers out of those 19 million are paying for a tier that includes the ACC network.
Right.
So you see why it starts to get a little complicated. When you start as a baseline, hey, DirecTV has 19 million. And, hey, they just cut a deal with Spectrum. That's 16 million more, so we're up to 35 million. And, oh, yeah, they have a deal with Verizon Fios. That's another 5 million, so now we're at 40 million. And, oh, they have a deal with Optimum and Suddenlink and Altice. That's another 3 or 4 million. And they have Hulu with live TV. That's 2 more million. They have YouTube TV. That's another million. They have Google Fiber and PlayStation View and T-Vision. And those are a few more million, right? But that's the number of households that you're in. But there is nowhere to find. I mean, trust me, I tried because I've written some tree-killing sized articles about this. Even though we know the ACC has partners who are in that, what would that be, 50 million plus American TV households, it is considered proprietary information. DirecTV will not tell us how many of their 19 million customers are on a tier that includes this network. So it's a good number. It's way better. I mean, the Pac-12 network has existed for 7 years, and the ACC is going to launch with way more subscribers than the Pac-12 network. That's really, really good news. Now, where does it end up slotting at the beginning? Probably behind the Big Ten network and the SEC network, which have somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to 60 million subscribers. The Pac-12 again is below 20 million. We're not sure about that, and we're also not sure at what price, because that's proprietary information as well.
We are visiting with Dave Glenn. We do this every Wednesday from August to April, talking ACC sports and other things in the world of sports. Our relationship has morphed into that where we can riff on just about anything during our time together. But staying within the confines of the league right now, the open-ended question, I think, going into the league that really everyone is asking, either publicly or privately, it seems to be Clemson and everybody else again this year. Out of that everybody else, who can challenge Dabo Swinney's Tigers?
It's a great question, and it's important for the ACC to answer it in a positive way, because the reality for this league, and you and I both know, we've gone from a world where basketball used to pay half the bills and football the other half. It's way more tilted toward football because of the TV money and other revenue streams now. And whereas the ACC clearly is the king of the hill in basketball, and it's been very good lately at times in football, it needs more depth, for example, than what happened last year. It's great for the league that Dabo Swinney and the Tigers are one of the best programs in the country beyond a shadow of a doubt. And I would put them right up there with Bobby Bowden's glory days, Florida State Seminoles, as, one of the best dynasties in ACC football history. That's a great starting point, and nobody should ever convince you otherwise. However, last year, there was only one other ACC football team that finished in the national top 25, and that was Syracuse in a breakthrough season under Dino Babers. What the ACC needs more of is what happened 3 years ago, where it wasn't just a mighty Clemson team again, but it was the kind of depth that we usually see in ACC basketball, where there could be 5, 6, 7 teams ranked in the national top 25, not just early in the season, but more importantly at the end of the season when you assess what happened. It was Louisville breaking through and Lamar Jackson winning the Heisman Trophy for the Cardinals, who had, I think, 10 wins that year. It was Miami in the national top 25. It was Virginia Tech in the national top 25. It was Florida State in the national top 10. Dan, the ACC has existed for 66 plus years at this point. The only year in the sport of football where they had 2 teams in the final top 10 of the polls and 5 total in the final top 25 polls was 2016. It's the only example ever in almost 7 decades. The ACC in 2019 needs more stories like that 2016 season that I just described. And they need fewer stories like the 2018 season that you and I watched last year. The candidates still include Syracuse. Some believe Miami could break through in year 1 under Manny Diaz. Some believe Florida State will bounce back in year 2 under Willie Taggart after, remember, the Seminoles had their bowl streak come to an end last year in Coach Taggart's first season.
Yep.
I think Wake Forest has a chance to have a nice year, but that doesn't mean challenging Clemson for Atlantic Division supremacy. So there are candidates. UVA is a popular pick to win the Coastal. Virginia Tech, under Justin Fuente, thinks it can have a bounce-back year after last year's disappointment. So there are plenty of candidates to be a top 25 type team, but I'm not sure there is a single sure thing beyond the Clemson Tigers, and it's a guessing game as to whether we're going to have something more like the depth of 2016 or more the shallow depth of 2018.
I was going to ask you about Virginia Tech because there seems to be an underlying disarray inside that program. Story came out, I think it was last week, that some of the players on last year's team wanted to lose the last game of the season because they didn't want to play in a bowl game, that there's been a lot of unrest inside the locker room. Number of players hit the transfer portal, team meetings in which they expressed displeasure with Justin Fuentes and the way he was going about his business, and yet you say you think they can be a bounce-back team here in 2019. I mean, if all of that stuff is even partially true, it seems there's a lot of baggage they have coming into this season.
Yeah, they think they can be a bounce-back team. I have some skepticism. I mean, I picked Virginia to win the Coastal, and I think Miami is their best competition this year. Now, the Hokies have some talent. There's no doubt about that. But you and I have been around long enough, I think, to have a nose for what I'm about to describe. There are times, Dan, where you know, because of your experience, something is not right behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And for example, over the years, if I was on the UNC beat or the Duke beat or the Wake Forest beat or the NC State beat, it would be my job to find out what was wrong behind the scenes. And I hopefully have a pretty good track record of doing such things. 33 years of this stuff sometimes leaves you knowing that something is wrong, but not knowing the exact details of what is wrong. Mm-hmm. But for example, when the legendary defensive coordinator, Bud Foster, you're one of the holdovers from Frank Beamer's staff and one of the greatest defensive coaches in modern college football history, that is not even a slight exaggeration. When he goes from having one of the worst statistical defenses of his entire career last year at Virginia Tech, after the transition to Justin Fuente, to announcing his retirement at the end of the upcoming season, that's a question mark. When the quarterback that Justin Fuente had at the beginning, Josh Jackson, who is the starter, decides to transfer away, that's a little bit of a red flag. When you have an unusual number of outgoing transfers or guys who turn pro even though the NFL is not beating their door down, there's another question mark there. And again, I don't know every last explanation for all of these oddities. But when you see that many oddities, something is not right. Is it partly the transition from Justin Fuente with some of Frank Beamer's leftovers? Who knows? Do Bud Foster and the holdovers recruit one way and Justin Fuente wants to recruit another way? Who knows? Is Coach Fuente or others, are they alienating players or even high school coaches in ways that are not yet fully flushed out? Maybe. We don't know all those answers. But that's an awful lot of red flags for a program that, for a while, remember, was one of the more consistent winners in all of college football under Frank Beamer. They had 2 good years under Justin Fuente right out of the gate, but their last 2 seasons, they've come back kind of crashing to earth. And that's a school like Clemson, like Florida State, like Miami. That is a football-first school, and there's no doubt about it. So if you're struggling in basketball at Virginia Tech, you might get a little benefit of the doubt. If you're struggling in football at that school, and you have these kinds of questions on top of it, you are going to be under the microscope. And that is certainly Justin Fuente, one of the examples, along with Willie Taggart of Florida State, of being under the most hot microscope that we have in the ACC this season.
You got time for one more?
Yeah.
I want to go off of football for a moment, and I don't even like saying this guy's name because he gives your other profession, as if your other profession, being a lawyer, needed a bad name, he gives it an even worse name. The Michael Avenatti stuff that's going on, but kind of in the midst of all of this junk, where he's concerned is a recent court filing that says Nike executives have given or did give the go-ahead to payments to a number of players, including Zion Williamson, who, of course, played his one college season at Duke. Anything to this? What are you hearing?
Well, the bottom line is, even though there is evidence that Nike funneled money to, quote-unquote, handlers and or family members of Zion Williamson, there's no evidence that Zion personally or his family members got money. And that might sound odd to some people, but you need evidence to prove such things. And sometimes we already know of cases where a handler has received money from this or that shoe company and the family never saw a dollar of it because the handler flew out the side door. So a handler taking money actually doesn't jeopardize the if he doesn't pass it along to the family or the player, it doesn't even jeopardize his eligibility. So we don't know all the facts here. We do know that there's even more evidence about, DeAndre Ayton, who's the one-and-done player at Arizona. So Sean Miller has his hands full one more time. We do know that whereas the Adidas stuff has already played out in the criminal justice system and there's already been convictions and, NC State is in trouble, one of the differences, Dan, that people need to remember is that at NC State, for example, there's evidence that Adidas actually utilized some combination of Mark Gottfried and his former assistant Orlando Early to get the money specifically to former Wolfpack star Dennis Smith Jr. or his family. Now, that is high-level NCAA problem stuff.
Right.
When one or more coaches are actively participating in one of the most egregious violations. We all know you can't funnel money, tens of thousands of dollars, to a player and his family. That's not an extra dessert in violation of NCAA rules, right? So when you do it the Adidas way in those criminal justice systems, there's all sorts of clear-cut NCAA violations. In the Nike case, what they did frequently was funnel money to sometimes handlers or even parents who were coaches. And you know what the NCAA does not want? They do not want a situation where they have to figure out, well, wait a minute, Nike already pays coaches legitimately. If Zion Williamson's stepdad got more than the typical amount of money to coach Zion's club basketball team, how do you draw that line? Where do you draw that line? Were other coaches getting X and Zion's stepdad was getting Y? That's a gray area that is entirely different than Wolfpack coach helps Dennis Smith Jr. get money, from the Adidas folks. So it is not nearly the kind of hand the evidence over from the FBI to the NCAA that has NC State in trouble right now, among others. And it's probably something that, unless we see more evidence come out, is going to die on the vine, in part because it's a much smaller number of players in schools, and in part because there's just not the same volume of evidence that we had in the Adidas cases.
Well, Dave, as always, man, great stuff. How can people get more of this kind of thing from you and what you're doing?
Well, a little bit of everything. ACCsports.com, our annual glossy kickoff edition of the magazine, is out, and bookstores and newsstands everywhere. You can always order one at ACCsports.com, 10 pages per ACC school. And I have a deep dive article on how the ACC network was born and some of those financial disparities that we were discussing earlier. I have more details than you can possibly want in that tree-killing article I wrote for there. Also, ACCsports.com, DavidGlennShow.com, and you mentioned it earlier, and I appreciate it. The Athletic has a sub-site called The Athletic Carolina. So there's a lot of North Carolina-related stuff on there, a lot of South Carolina-related stuff on there, a lot of ACC-related stuff on there. So I encourage folks to find my work and that of my colleagues. It's some of the best sports writing in the business, in my opinion. TheAthletic.com and The Athletic Carolina.
Well, listen, man, thank you. Looking forward to getting this train rolling every week and following the ACC journey, and who knows where it's going to take us on a week-to-week basis. We'll talk to you 1 week from today, Dave. Thanks.
Good to be with you, as always, my friend. Keep up the good work.
All right, there you go. Dave Glenn, ACCsports.com, The David Glenn Show, and The Athletic Carolinas. Quick break, come back, and we'll close it out. Probably going to run 5 minutes or so past 11 o'clock to get everything in, but that's okay. I kind of owe it to you, don't I? We'll be back to wrap up the program right after this. Hey, everybody, Dan Scott. You know, I've been telling you for some time now that I switched to protection of my home and family to Security Complete. I can tell you that I've been ecstatic with the results. Locally owned with more than 40 years experience in the industry, Security Complete uses nothing but the latest technology, which equals low overhead, which equals greater savings to the customer. Fully automated systems with monitoring rates much lower than the competition. Security Complete gives you all this and does not require a contract of any length. Find out more by calling 864-546-0630 or find them on Facebook and Twitter. Security Complete, my first line of defense. Make them yours today.
We're all trying to find our way. Forge a path, blaze a trail. The work is hard and the work is personal, but you can't do it alone. At Furman, we're committed to giving you an advantage. The Furman Advantage. We know that graduates who are emotionally supported and who have deep learning experiences in college are 3 times as likely to be engaged at work and thriving in life. At Furman, all students are guaranteed 4 years of rigorous classroom education integrated with high-impact research, internships, study away, and a community of support every step of the way. This is the Furman Advantage.
Is your roof leaking or damaged? Do your gutters need repaired? You can Google roofing companies until your computer overheats, or you can simply call the best, Bracken Roofing and Gutter. Whether it's roof replacement, new and remodel installation, roofing insurance claims, whatever your needs, Bracken Roofing and Gutter will simply do it right the first time. And the same goes for gutter screen installations. Forget about balancing on ladders and cleaning your gutters. Let Bracken Roofing and Gutter screen them for you today. Listen, do not settle for subpar work. Get a free inspection today. Check out the reviews on Facebook. You'll see many satisfied customers, and they're all saying the same thing, that they're happy that they chose Bracken Roofing and Gutter. That's Bracken Roofing and Gutter. Call Kyle today at 864-704-5993. All right, welcome back to the show. We are in the final segment. Our thanks to Dave Glenn for joining us and hanging out with us as he does on Wednesdays, and looking forward to doing that every week. All right, so I've promised you a couple of things. Let's get to it. First of all, this is Clay Hendricks. I think from the day before yesterday, I went out to practice when it was done and caught up with him, but just a little bit of an overview of how things are going, coming off of last Saturday's final scrimmage and looking ahead to beginning game week preparation for the opener with Charleston Southern. Here's what Clay Hendricks had to say.
Checking in after Monday's practice with head coach Clay Hendricks. Noticed some big plays out of your offense at the end today. Is that good for the offense or bad for the defense?
Well, that's the thing when it's you versus them. It's good when you get a sack. It's not good when you get a sack, But no, I thought we had a really good day. I just told them, Mondays are tough for everybody. I said 10 years from now, Mondays will be tough, when you go to work. But they came out here. It was hot. We have a really physical practice like we do most days, and got a couple of guys back out here. But no, I was really pleased with the work we got in.
Are you getting to the point where you can sense they're tired of looking at each other?
Oh, yeah. There's no question about that. We just said, I think we're in great shape. We're still running afterwards, but, we just got to continue to push through and continue that. I do think we have some depth. We've built some depth through recruiting and through development of players. But yeah, and I'm like them. I want to play a game too, but we're not quite ready. I'd hope by the end of this week we'll be ready to play a game.
Yeah, I was going to ask you kind of where you thought you were right now opposed to where you want to be.
Well, I think we'll come back tomorrow and have something similar to today. And I think Wednesday we'll turn attention probably totally to Charleston Southern. And I mean the things they do, we've done a lot of that stuff, but I think when we do that, it'll get a little simpler, especially for the young guys. Our offense throws a lot at our defense. You're a young safety back there trying to deal with a lot of the stuff that we throw at them, makes it tough. I think one of the things you do when you get in a game week, the playbook shrinks quite a bit. So hopefully you can speed up how those guys are playing once you can focus on the opponent.
No, on Saturday you didn't do any tackling at the scrimmage, but you did it live speed, you did it with officials. When you had a chance to go back and review the film, what'd you see?
It wasn't as bad as you thought. It's never as good, never as bad. Kind of what I thought Darren Granger had a really good day. I thought, again, Wayne Anderson continued to play well. I think the biggest thing, and I told our coaches, is right now just making too many mistakes. Mistakes beat you. We've got to get better at that area. And, when you're repping every guy in your program, that's going to happen. But I thought our effort was good. We looked a little tired, which we were. But everything I saw there is fixable. So, again, wasn't quite as bad as I thought, and I thought we had a really good day today.
I guess that's a good thing, right? If it's fixable.
No doubt. I've known in the last couple of years there's some times you're like, whew, we're not very good right there. Just either physically we can't match up, or and I didn't really see that. I didn't see that. It was good work. Got some situational stuff in, and yeah, I mean you want to score points and move the ball, but that's not our focus right now. We're just trying to keep getting better individually and offensively and defensively.
A couple of more things. When I talked to George late last week, he was making a point that this year compared to last year, and especially your first year 2 years ago, the depth that you have and the things you can do now that you couldn't do then because of that.
No question. Up front we're just a different group, and we got more guys. I think we have some really good backs. I think our quarterbacks have been solid. I think we're doing what we want to do. I think we're at the point in the program, well, we can't do that because we don't have personnel to. I think we're kind of doing the things we want to do. Both offensively and defensively, and it's just nice when you're investing in guys that you just truly feel like they can play for you down the road. There's a lot of reps to go around, and sometimes you're pouring reps into a guy who may not have the ability you're kind of looking for to play for you. But we've got quality players, and our coaches have done a great job of pouring into those guys and working hard to develop them.
Finally, as you begin, I guess, third week of full practice here, how are you holding up health-wise?
Not bad. Got a couple of guys back today, and it seems a few of the guys that we've had out, we'll get back. So I'm, this point in time, everybody's a little beat up, but I think we're in pretty good shape where we are, and hopefully by the end of this week we can get most everybody well.
All right, sounds good, Clay. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, that was head coach Clay Hendricks. Excuse me there. Got a little echo going on as well. Beginning prep for Charleston Southern, so it is here. We have students coming into campus this week, moving in. Classes begin on Tuesday, but they will go from morning practices to afternoon practices, get on that schedule starting on Monday and get into full game week mode. And, of course, we'll be in game week mode with them as we prepare for the first broadcast of the upcoming season, which gets us to a couple of things we want to do to close out the program. First of all, as mentioned, with a new rights holder comes new branding, and it was laid upon me as a director of broadcasting to go out and find the new network theme that we're going to be using in the coming years. When we were with IMG, they had their own production aspect of things and their own music, and you've heard that over the last or really over the last 10 years. Well, Van Wagner, they don't have the production aspect of things. So Jason Capel, the regional VP, says, just go ahead and take care of that for us. So I searched, man. When it comes to finding something like this and then dealing with the licensing and everything you have to do, it is very, very involved. But we finally got it. I chose something that I think is going to be a really, really good good branding theme for us. And I'm going to let you hear it now. Of course, it's not going to have any of the talking over it or anything that'll come when we do our in-game imaging. But this is the 60-second version. This is the new Furman Radio Network theme brought to you by Van Wagner. Check this out. What do you think? I like it. Of course, I chose it, so yeah, I'm going to like it. And we've licensed it for 3 years, so it's going to be around whether you want it or not. But a lot of research went into that. That's the 60-second version. There are longer versions and shorter versions, but that's our new Furman Sports Network theme, and you're going to be hearing a lot of it. As we say goodbye, the other thing I'm going to leave you with, and we'll let this kind of trail out the show, we mentioned that every pregame show during football season, we do a segment called Furman Flashback. That is the look back at the previous week's game told through the story of the in-game radio highlights. Well, for the first game of the season, we have to look back at the previous year. So what we have in our Furman Flashback that will air during the August 31st season opening pregame show, the countdown to kickoff, is right here, and you're going to hear it now before anybody else does. This is an audio tour through some of the biggest moments of the 2018 Furman college football season, and as this wraps up, that'll take us to the end of the program. So we look forward to doing it again. We'll see you back here tomorrow, same time, same place, and talk a little bit more about Furman athletics and see what else is going on. Here is our hype audio, the Furman Flashback, and you get the first listen to it on the Dan Scott Show. Until tomorrow, you folks have a good one. I'll see you later. God bless you. So long, everybody. down and 10. Handoff, big hole. Deion Sanders, midfield. 45, 40, 30. Inside the 25, down to the 20-yard line. It is prime time with the big run. Deion Sanders ripping off a run down to the 20-yard line in Clemson territory. Out of the eye on 1st and 10, a receiver split to each side. And Roberts play action, dropping the throw, looking, going deep. Gordon wide open, makes the catch inside the 30, inside the 20, to the far side, and finally brought down at the 15-yard line. Boy, the play action caused everybody on the ETSU defense to bite. Gordon was wide open, and quite honestly, the only reason that thing wasn't a touchdown is that it was underthrown. Dominique Williams finally ran him down. And it will be Bell taking in the middle of the field, breaking it to the far side, the 30, the 40. He's at midfield, down the far sideline. One man to beat. Good morning, good afternoon, good night. Touchdown, the freshman, DeJuan Bell. Yeah, he's back there. Yeah, he's got an answer, and so do the Paladins. Holy Toledo.
Yeah, you couldn't be more prouder and happier for him, and what a way for him to respond after last week. I mean, he had a couple of blocks, but they also were a couple of Western Carolina defenders who had angles on him, and he just flat out ran them. And what a great return. Welcome to Paladin Stadium, DeJuan Bell.
97 yards for the freshman, and the Paladins answer just like that. And play action to the left, rolling to his right. Roberts throwing, end zone touchdown! Ryan DeLuca. He had one in the back of the end zone. DeLuca was in the front of the end zone, and Roberts found number 83 for the score, his third touchdown pass of the afternoon. It is 27-7 Purple. Atkins with a chance to inexplicably almost give Furman a lead here going into halftime. It's going to take a big leg from 53 yards. Lined up and ready. Snap to Vita is good. Kick on the way. Distance, and it's good! Ho-ho! Time expires. If he had to go 54, I don't know if he'd have made it, but it was good from 53. And the Paladins lead it at halftime, 12-10. Kickers don't normally get these, but David Cobb, Holy Toledo.
Run clock run.
2:23, 2:22, second down and 3. And he's going to drop the throw. Looking, wants to go deep. We hit him. He lost the football. It's picked up. Donovan Perryman scooped it. He's going to score. And the Paladins just delivered a knockout blow here in Charleston with 2:09 remaining. Big hit. Big play. Touchdown, Paladins. Holy Toledo.
Jalen Reed with the stick. We were trying to find a player of the game, right? I'll vote for 75 right now. I'll even give you 44.
27-17 Paladins. And look at them. The home fans are hitting the aisles like an altar call at a Billy Graham crusade. Handoff, Wynn, skipping through the middle. Big hole. Look out. He's gone. Touchdown. Wow. Just like that. 43 yards. Devin Wynn. He's got the hat trick here this afternoon. The Red Sea literally parted, and Devin Wynn untouched for the score. It is 41-7.
Riley flushed out of the pocket to the right. Hope got him. Ball game. While I breathe, I hope. Number 15 of the season for the redshirt freshman. The Paladins storm off the sidelines. The celebration ensues. Furman claims a share of the 2018 Southern Conference Championship and win it here at Mercer 35-30. Dwight Covington's in the booth, I think. Holy Toledo, what a finish for the Paladins.